And good evening, everyone. Sorry for the delay. I know it's been a while since I've dropped another video, but with the ice storm and things going on like that, trying to get ready for it, working around the family and the job and stuff like that, it just wasn't going to happen. But I was able to get knock one out tonight, and this is an episode that I've been actually really looking forward to because what we're going to talk about isn't necessarily pointing fingers at who is the problem, but it's just a theory as to like when you see a lot of the division and the divide in American politics, specifically between people and ideological constructs, it kind of all centers around one group of people. Um, and yeah, I've been wanting to get into this one for a while just because I want to hear your thoughts. I want you really to like think about it for a second and be like, man, maybe he has a point there. But anyway, this is a Letter to the Left podcast. This is where we are trying to drive discussion, trying to make this go as far as we can to see what is actually going on with kind of the macro level uh, ideological differences that we have in this country. And yeah, I'm actually super excited for this episode. So, nevertheless, let's get into it. So the question is like, what is the problem? And I don't mean that as a central issue, just like, hey, who or what entities are sitting here pushing all this divide? Because you see all the name calling, especially when it comes to the left to the right. It's always you're a racist, you're a bigot. If you watch my first episode, I kind of talk into how like that happened to start, especially during the 2008 campaign with Obama, and how it kind of evolved into just being like this consistent and constant idea that the right is full of all these fascists and they're Nazis and they just want to kill everyone that's not them and all this shit, which is completely false, right? But the more you think about it, there has to be a group of people who kind of like are the catalyst for this, that kind of push that narrative and almost what's the term? Kind of amplify that rhetoric, right? Like there's a group of people that really kind of lock in on that. And that group, it's, I bet you can't guess it. It's not like a different race or religion. All right. Like, I know what you're going to think. I already know what you're thinking. No, it's the liberal woman. Yeah. Now, hear me out. I know what you're thinking. You're like, what is this guy talking about? The liberal woman. Like, that's the problem. It's like, yes. What is the liberal woman? There's no conviction behind them, right? They're usually feminists. They're single issue voters for the most part. And they're highly, highly reactive emotionally to anything that really happens that can be deemed as a national talking point. We saw it for BLM riots, right? The ridiculous TikToks of the girls like doing these stupid, like, you know what I'm saying? The riots, most protests are just full of boomer old ladies and then also like young liberal women. The vast majority of them are full of that. Um, so, like, what are they? Who are they? In my opinion, they are people who, in this world that we live in where everything is instant gratification, instant information at the touch of your fingers, there's truly no suffering on a mass scale in this world. You know, like when you think about it, we're not like dying of the cold all the time. You know, we're not dying of childbirth nearly as much. We're not dying of things like that, right? There's no survival really instinct that humans have as much as they used to. Now, obviously, that's dependent on a macro scale. I'm talking about like, you know, the giant humanity as a whole. That we're living longer, we're healthier. Obviously, in specific places and instances that still exists, but they don't have that second tier level of I need to live for something. In high school, these were the people that went with the flow. They were the people that believed everything the teacher said, or they believed everything that was popular, or what have you, because they were so desperate, and or the exact opposite, or they were just like the outcasts, right? The theater kids that were what crazy outcasts. One or the other. So when you see liberal women or these feminists, they what do? They immediately latch on to something that makes them what I call victim adjacent. It doesn't matter if they were a part of it, if they saw any of it, if they know anything going on, if they know or they do any background information. It doesn't matter. As long as the talking point is on the national scale, especially over social media, they will align themselves with the perceived, I want to quote it, perceived victim. The reason why they do this is simple. They want that attention. It's inherent to their whole ideological and mental state. They cannot fathom a world where they are not in line with the it thing, the trend, right? They're trendy. You see it all the time. You see it all the time. They're exceptionally trendy. They're single issue voters. What they want is them to get a bunch of likes, them to get a bunch of self gratification, and also external gratification from their other friends and their other ignorant cesspools. Really, you see it all the again. You see it all the time. You see it in college specifically, right? But I want to point a specific instance, the George Floyd riots. Now, when you think of feminists and you think of the liberal woman, what do you think? You think someone who advocates for women's rights, speaks out against the abuse of women specifically. That's where I'm getting to. And really anything that has to do with the women being in a more superior role. They'll say it's equality. They don't care about equality. They want superiority, which is fine. That's how feminism is. Any ism is an elitist / superiority construct. Just know that. Write that down, kids. But when you talk to them and you really analyze their belief system, what did they do? They dropped everything to George Floyd, Jacob Blake, Breonna Taylor. That summer of love in 2020 was when I really noticed it, like on a mass scale. And I was like, these people may actually be one of the center points of where all this division is coming from. They're usually the loudest. They're the most dramatic. They're the most emotional. But think about it. These so-called feminists that they call themselves most of the time say they're for women's rights, but yet they supported Jacob Blake, who had multiple counts of aggravated assault against women on his record, to include holding a pregnant lady hostage by holding a gun to her pregnant belly. Jacob Blake, a convicted rapist who was in the act of assaulting the mother and the daughter in the relation to the girl that he raped, violating a restraining order with a weapon. And then Breonna Taylor. They talk about Breonna Taylor a lot. A lot of people drop this. Like, again, there's no follow-up with these people, right? But no one... You understand why those cops never, like, got any accountability, right? Because they finally released the data, the actual body cam footage of the no-knock order for Breonna Taylor, and found out that she was hiding with her criminal boyfriend, who they were serving the warrant for, who both had guns and actively started shooting when they broke down the door for the no-knock order. They were hiding behind a table. So, no, she was not just sleeping in her bed. That's false. So it's one of those things where you look at that and it's like, well, that defies everything you should believe in. And that's not just it. I mean, normally they would be completely for those people dying, to be honest with you, right? But they weren't. They were emotionally incompetent to the point to where they were supporting, like, the literal ransack of cities all over the country for these people. Little black squares, right? Anything to make themselves feel like they're part of the problem, because they have to be victim adjacent. It doesn't just stop there. You look at the hypocrisy of what they say and claim they believe, and yet their unfettered conviction that illegal immigration is good for the country. You see it all the time, especially when it comes to Islamic-based countries and their immigration to Western civilization. In Europe, crazy, ecstatic. Like, literally all the news is there, right? I don't have to go into the Pakistani rape gangs in England. That was a huge cover-up. You dive into it, it's crazy. I don't have to go into Islamism as a whole, which is inherently anti-woman. It has to be, right? Everything about that defies what these feminists supposedly believe, yet they will bend over backwards for these migrants. A lot of these migrants, especially in the last 5 years, who have been openly dominating these statistics on a sexual assault against women and rape. openly, it's like it's a domination statistic thing. Like it's insane when you actually dive into the stats and the data, especially in Europe. Like how when this stuff started, like rape went up like 3,000% in some of these countries, and they're like, oh, who could do that? And then like the one demographic study was like, yeah, it's almost like all Pakistani and Middle Eastern men, and they had to like shut that shit down because it was too racist, quote unquote. That's what we're dealing with. And the more you dive into that, you see even more hypocrisy. Remember, they overwhelmingly voted for Biden, who was well known as being kind of a creep and a womanizer, whose son is a well-known womanizer and whoremonger, if you will. They, of course, I don't need to go into Jacob Blake again and George Floyd, but Hillary Clinton, whose husband is a well-known, I mean, I don't have to get into Bill Clinton, right? But she was well-known as a lawyer at the time of defending sex criminals, like assaulters, like predators and shit. Like she was well-known for that. She's on record multiple times getting people like that out. It's insane because it's just consistent and constant how they will walk around the world with their giant pussy caps in protest of a man who said grab her straight from the pussy, right? Big bad orange men, yet again, the derangement is real. But yet they will vote overwhelmingly for people that don't believe in anything that they believe in, especially when it comes to the feminist slash liberal women like pillars of ideological thought. It's absolutely insane. And again, I pry you to challenge these people because almost every time they call you something, whether it's racist, fascist, they don't have no idea, misogynist, they have no idea how to define that word. If you just ask them very simply, what is that? What do you mean by that? And be direct. Again, to my right-wing wings, be direct with these people. Because again, when I'm telling you this, these are the keys to the test. This is how you debate. This is how you win rooms. You challenge the leftist women in the room because they're usually the loudest. They have the most ignorant of opinions. Like almost every single time they have no idea. Look at the Gaza. You see all these journalists who went out there and were asking these liberal white women, specifically white women, like, what do you believe in Gaza? Like, what's going on, do you think? And they're talking about genocide. And you're like, okay, how? Like, what do you mean by that? Like, what's going on? Who's it between? And they have no answer because the reality of it is liberal women are lost. They don't have something, and they can't sit there and go with the more normal traditional idea of a woman, which is obviously like, hey, you have kids, you raise families, you be nurturing. They can't do that because they've been indoctrinated by their mothers and their grandmothers who were the hippies in the 60s, who are out there being boomers right now, losing their minds over immigration shit. They can't fathom that their lives matter more than just politics. And they can't even believe the fact that they're not going to be on the right side of history. That's what you always hear them say. I'm going to be on the right side of history. It's like, why? If you're claiming that, you're probably not. You're probably on the wrong side. That's kind of the issue, really, is that we're dealing with this group of people. Again, liberal women. This is about what I believe is kind of the center point demographic, liberal women specifically, of mass ignorance of the details, mass ignorance of follow-up. What they do, and this is how they get their information, I'm telling you right now, they see the inflammatory headlines. I've talked to you guys about how mass media today and mainstream media use propaganda and why they don't get their credentials taken anymore. Because they do tell you the truth. They tell you the truth at the bottom of the articles. That has nothing to do with the inflammatory headline. They're counting on that. Their main group that they are targeting are liberal women, specifically on Facebook and Instagram. Because why? They know that all their friends from college that they partied with, that they get peer pressure with, all this shit, they're going to blindly share these articles that have inflammatory headlines. And almost every single time it's about a perpetrator, a perceived perpetrator, really, a.k.a. any kind of Republican, it seems like, or any kind of conservative, or white man, right, or white straight male Christian, whatever the fuck. And then it goes and, like, builds into a perceived victim So they have the answer to the test. They know that the liberal woman that is watching that is going to immediately know, with her bias and her already narrative, that she believes in her head to be true. That's already been subsequently tallied and layered over on each other for over a decade and a half now. That she can become a victim by proxy. She can be oppressed by proxy. And when you're like that, you get more attention. We've seen it multiple times. It's a mental illness to an extent. The idea that you want to be a victim. We have that in our country now. We have that in our world where everyone needs a story. You have to, right? Everyone needs some sort of heroic story where you're going to be on the, quote, right side of history and you're going to be in the history books. But the problem is we live in a world where there's constant cameras, there's constant audio, there's constant filming everything, and nothing adds up. But they don't know that because they do not care. They know what they believe in, and it doesn't matter what you present them with. We've seen it multiple times with AOC and Ilhan Omar, right? You can present to them everything that you have. Be like, hey, you could have God himself sit down, the most liberal of women, and be like, this is how it is. You're wrong. I will show you, and I will make you omnipotent and omniscient for a day, to where they all know and are all powerful for a day. And they will see everything that they ever believed in crumble, and they would still refuse to believe it. That's what we're dealing with. These liberal women, they're very susceptible to indoctrination because the mainstream media and the history of the United States. Our generation is a generation that grew up in the time where our American history was riddled with stuff about the Civil War and then the Civil Rights Movement, right? Where there was a known perpetrator and a known victim, specifically based in race. Our country has glorified its own history when it comes to be, well, we fight for the rights of the little man, right? Because, I mean, historically speaking, we were one of the first countries to get rid of slavery. We were one of the first countries to allow former slaves to vote. We were one of the first countries to allow women to vote. We're allowed all this stuff, right? However, it's backfired to an extent because now these liberal women in general, have grown up in our history in middle school when they're going through, boys too, but mainly women, when they're going through puberty, they're highly emotional, and they see and read these stories about the civil rights movement specifically, where it's like, oh, these people, and what did they do? They sit there and tell themselves, I would never be on that side. In a turning point in their life and maturity where their hormones are raging, their feelings are raging, not their fault. And so they're reading these things of history at that time, and they're like, well, I can't be that. I can't be on the wrong side of history. You couple that with their parents or their grandparents who were likely the hippies of the 60s and 70s. And what does that give you? It gives you multiple generations of a row of these women who do not care about having kids, do not care about caring for kids, don't care about the reality of life and anything like that, any kind of sanctity of life. All they believe in is, I need to be right and I need to be on the wrong side of history. So what do? No matter what the truth is, they will align themselves with whoever is the perceived victim. Again, I don't need to go into George Floyd. I don't need to go into their attempt at making themselves a victim to Donald Trump that they've never known. Like, a lot of people don't understand, Donald Trump was an icon in the 80s and 90s. Like, way bigger than he was prior to running for president. Like, this was not he's like kind of a celebrity. Like, he was big. Like, everyone knew who Trump was. He was huge. He was on all the commercials, cameoed in movies. He was everywhere. That was never an issue then, right? They talk about, well, yeah, he was a smooth talker. He always was good with the ladies because he's rich. But, again, that was never a problem. That was shown as a status until now, right? When it became convenient. Again, go back to my first one where Donald Trump was pretty much a 2008 Democrat, and for some reason when he ran, the Democrats were like, well, we can't align with him, so because he's running on the Republican ticket, so we have to villainize him, which completely screwed their whole base and devolved them into what they are today. But I digress on that. How do we fix it? Because it's heading to a multiple issues. First of all, liberal women are being outproduced by obviously more conservative women who want to have kids, have a lot of kids, and then also religious groups like the Islam and like Christians. They have more kids, so they're being outproduced. So they're kind of a dying. Like this is the peak of it. Likely, they're probably going to die off. But how do we deal with it now? Because right now you're dealing with Gen Z, who's 70% conservative on the male side. One of the biggest I mean, they're very right-wing, but their females are like 60% liberal, like, and some of the most liberalist of libs. So how do we counter that? It's very simple. You do exactly, you get on the offense. These people can't argue. These women cannot argue. These leftist women. These feminists. They have no idea when you get in the ring, but you've been too shallow and too cowardice, if I say. I mean, I wouldn't say cowardice is a tough word. You just haven't gone to the trouble of challenging people in a public forum. We haven't. Republicans have been on defense for like fucking 20 years. We need to get on the offense when it comes to that if we want to kind of thwart one of their biggest demographics. Because the liberal women is, mark my word, is the biggest and easiest demographic to emotionally charge. Because, again, they have zero idea the details or follow-up of the situation, but if they can make themselves victim adjacent, that's all they care about. So, again, you take it to them. You do exactly what I said. When they call you racist or fascist, you see all the videos of the journalists. They're kind of doing it now on YouTube, so I'm happy that's happening. Well, you see, like, they go out there and they ask these people, What do you mean by a fascist? Like, what exactly does he do that's fascist? What is fascism? Or what is misogynism? You see those podcasts that are like, they challenge women, kind of. You know what I'm talking about? I know you do. But, like, every time these women are, like, speechless or they cry because they can't answer, because they're all just parroting what their favorite Hollywood stars or influencers said, and all those people are just as stupid. Look at The View. Look at that panel of idiots. The View is arguably one of the biggest panels of just falsehoods in general. Like, if you fact check The View, it takes you, like, every single statement that group of women, those boomer women, say are almost always fucking wrong. Like, blatantly. It's not like they're just fibbing. It's like, no, they actually believe that, and they think that they're right. Because none of these people, the secret is none of these people do any of that work, guys. None of these celebrities, none of these people of high set. I would even say most of these politicians, they're not in the know. They're just like you. They're getting 99% of their shit from their algorithms on social media. And it's radicalizing them. The problem is the liberal woman specifically is far more resistant to declaring that, yeah, I'm wrong. Because, again, it goes back to what I talked about earlier. They cannot be seen, and they cannot see themselves in the mirror and be like, oh, I'm on the wrong side of history. They can't fathom that. That would destroy them because they've wrapped their whole identity of a human being and put all their value in being a human being to their political ideological construct. To being that feminist, right? That feminist. Someone who is constantly championed for the little guy. At least that's what they so claim. Not really. That's what's going on. That's the most dangerous demographic, in my opinion. It's not the illegal immigrant. It's not the liberal men, really, kind of. It's not the Muslims. It's not Russia. It's not China. It's not foreign agitators. It's not the Democrats as a whole. It's liberal women and their base. Because they're going to vote. It doesn't matter how wrong they are. They're going to vote, again, with the victim adjacent. And they're not going to do any deep dive into what they actually believe. They have zero conviction. Even that one that one former jihadist. I forgot his freaking name, but he did that interview. I want to say with Matt Walsh or Tucker Carlson. One of them. He did an interview with them, and he talked about how Islamists come to America, and when they run for office, they go on the liberal ticket because liberals have zero conviction. And his number one reason was because the women will believe anything they say that makes them feel good about themselves. The way they do that is by aligning themselves with the perceived victim. Again, I will keep pounding that into oblivion because once you figure that out, they're crazily easy to debate with. They're insanely easy because then you figure out where every single angle is. No matter what the topic is, you see the angle. So you know what they're going to say. They're going to parrot the exact same nonsense that every single liberal politician that's just wanting to get votes to stay in power, that are pretty much held hostage by their own radicalized base at this point. They're going to parrot whatever Taylor Swift or any of those lib morons in Hollywood that don't know anything about fuck all. None of the details, because they're too fucking busy. Like what? You think they're in the know because they're rich and powerful? Dude, they're too busy to find the details and read through. They're doing the exact same shit. But these liberal women, that's who they listen to. And once you challenge them and you figure out that angle that I told you, they will always go for the perceived victim. Then you know every angle, and you know what they're going to say, and then you know exactly how to take them down. And it literally starts with asking definitions of words that they use. Because they're going to, again, they parrot. They're going to use the exact same words. It's all the buzzwords. You're a fascist. You're a misogynist. You're a racist. Okay? Define that. You start easily by, okay, what do you mean by that? What's your definition of a fascist? They'll go into it. They won't know it. They're either not going to answer you or they're going to give you a bullshit definition. If they say Nazi, say, okay, well, then what's a Nazi? Because Nazi and fascist, yes, Nazis were fascist, but they're not synonymous necessarily. You can have someone who's a fascist and not a Nazi. So they'll do that too. I'm just telling you exactly because, again, experience. Cool. What do you mean by that? They're not going to answer you. Sick. Okay, well, then explain to me what makes me a fascist. You do something like that. You make them bring up points that they have no idea who you are, and then it starts to click in their heads. So what they're going to do is very simple. They're going to turn around, they're going to try to ignore you, or they're going to get super emotionally butthurt, and they're going to start yelling louder. You just stay calm. Again, how you do this, you take them down through the mental gymnastics, all right? It's super fucking easy at that point. Okay, cool. You go into that, and they're going to say stuff like, okay, well, it doesn't matter. If you vote for Donald Trump, you're a fascist or a Nazi or whatever. Okay, what specifically has he passed that is fascist inherently or legally? Something like that question. Like, again, bring it around to what they're accusing you of doing. Because 99% of the time, they have no reason or rationale as to why they called you that. Again, they're parroting because they have to look like the good guys. I cannot stress that enough. They want so hard to be the civil rights activists. They want so bad to etch their name in history. But the problem is, we don't have that legal system anymore that we did back in the day, that all these countries were super susceptible. I mean, every country in history, subjugated or enslaved different races of people, but whatever. I digress on that. But they want so bad. They're born in the wrong generation, is what I'm trying to get at. Because there are no laws that allow it. The only laws that allowed true racism were like affirmative action laws, and those were struck down because they were actually racist. They were racist towards white people, but, whatever. They're never going to admit that to this day. Anyway, you go to that, and again, you keep it around the fascism comment or the racist or whatever. Okay, cool. What exactly makes... if they bring up a specific answer, okay, what makes that racist? What makes that fascist? And it goes on and on and on. You keep making them explain themselves. You stay on offense. Don't let them deflect. They're going to try to deflect to a different thing. Stay on your topic. Because when you stay on your topic, if they deflect, it's exposed. And then people see that, and people watching videos or listening to conversations are going to be like, holy fuck. She didn't know what she was talking about. Cool. Now she looks like the idiot they've lost. If they do, answer you, they're going to answer wrong because there is no reason. And they know that, which is why they keep using these buzzwords that are just parrot, because they have no actual basis for why they believe that. I want to take a second to go back to a specific instance. Most of you know about something that came out about 2 years ago. It was really hit. It was a huge hit in all the fucking white savior or the liberal women feminist areas. And it was the survey where women said they'd rather be in a wooded area with a bear, alone with a bear or a man. And the vast majority of them voted for the bear. That's a good example of being victim adjacent, where they have to make themselves a victim. There is no way in hell that a woman of any capacity would ever rationally choose a bear, a wild bear, over a man. Ever. Literally ever. And I thought to myself, God, I wish Elon Musk or a billionaire would put that to the test. Be like, okay, any feminists that voted yes on that, or some huge feminists that voted for that on Twitter, challenge them, pay them a gazillion fucking dollars, be like, we're going to put you in a wooded area. There's a bear on one side and a man on the other. You don't know which one's which. Watch which way they go. I promise you they're not going to go encounter a wild fucking animal on their own choice. All right? That's repulsive. But it brings up a very specific point. First of all, feminists or these women are just as sexist as they think men are, because they think that men are no different from wild animals. So all you feminists, I hope this gets to you. If you have sons that you're trying to teach to be better, I want you to know that he will remember that and think that you think of him as nothing but a fucking stupid wild animal that will rip anyone's heart out and have no self-control. Second, bringing that up shows a very specific devotion to being a victim. Because if you look at that, what they're going to bring up is very simple. Well, women are more likely to be attacked by a man than a bear. Yes. When they bring that up, I want you to listen to me. This is how you argue that. Because when you want to expose these feminist women, this is how you do it. You bring up this survey and you go down every single loophole I'm about to show you. You ask them, okay, cool. Yes, that is true. That's how probability works. How many men do you encounter a day? They're not going to have the number. How many bears do you encounter a day? The vast majority of people are going to say 0. Cool. That's why you're more likely to be attacked by a man than a bear. Period. Dot. Because that's how that works. You bring that up, then they're going to trip over themselves. They're going to wonder still, I don't necessarily care about that. The fact is I feel more comfortable with a bear over a man. Really? Okay, why is that? Why did you even pick this survey to begin with? Why? Well, again, like I said, more likely. Cool. Let's break that down even further. And this is where you're going to kick them in the ball sack if they had them. Okay, cool. Let's talk about probabilities. I already brought up the bear thing, but let's negate that, and let's just say you're going based on the data that you're talking about and the probability of it based on that data. Let's break that data down even further. What demographic owns the vast majority of aggravated assaults against women, whether it's sexual or not? Go. All of you know the answer in your head, right? Cool. Now that we know that, they're going to lose their mind when you say that. Because the reality of it is, the survey was, would you rather be trapped in the woods and encounter a bear or a man? They obviously voted in a way to make him a victim. But if you take that and you ask them point blank this, you say, okay, cool, now that we've established all this stuff that makes you wrong on this, let me switch this up to be a little bit more accurate of statistics and data like you're talking about that you want to believe in, allegedly, even though you're taking it out of context. Cool. If it were to say, and this survey was given to these women, the same women who voted for a bear over a man, if it were to say, would you rather be alone in the woods between a bear or a black man, what do you think these women would do? I want you to think on it. They would storm out of that fucking place. They would call whoever was making that survey racist as hell, and that would be the story of the town. Right? But no. because it's all fake. And that's what I'm trying to get at with this podcast. These women, you see them right now. They will bend over backwards for everyone else, especially if these people don't believe in the same way. You saw it with Lake and Riley. You saw it like they do not care. They will do anything that makes them a perceived victim based on the popularity of the idea. Essentially, they're trendy. You've seen it. All you men out there, even your wives, you know exactly what I'm talking about. All you men with wives, girlfriends, or anything, you've seen how trendy they are. It's no different from politics. They're going to do anything that tugs their heartstrings just a little bit, and they're going to lose their mind. Well, Nolan, there were husbands that were saying, well, I'd rather my daughter. They're shitty fucking dads. I'll call any dad out. If you sit there and say that you would rather your daughter encounter a fucking bear and likely die and likely get ripped apart alive, the last thing your fucking daughter will know on this earth is the pain of being eviscerated by a fucking wild animal, than to encounter a man on a trail or in a wood line that will likely not even fucking assault her at all. Will likely, because again, the vast majority of men are not predators. They would probably be like, oh, there's this fucking child here. I need to go find, where's your dad? You're a shitty dad. Period. Dot. And I'll look at you in the eye and tell you that, if you believe that. Because it's repulsive. It is absolutely repulsive to sit there and think that you think that your daughter would be better off encountering a bear. Well, man's more unpredictable. So? You have way more of a chance. If there was a one-on-one, you have way more of a chance surviving with a fellow human being than you do a fucking bear. Especially if you're a child, because you're smaller. Even a black bear would pick off a child pretty easily if they could. So, I say all this because I want everyone, especially if you're on the right. If you're on the left, I hope you took this to heart. I hope you got offended personally, because I want you to really think about what we know. And I want you to think about your own convictions and your own rationale for what you believe in, and realize that, yeah, we may be fucked on some of this stuff. On the right, this is how you expose them, especially the feminists. This is how you argue with them. You pick them apart and you don't let them deflect, because all they're going to do is deflect when they don't know an answer. They're going to try to go on the offense. You stay offensive. You keep asking them questions. You make them explain themselves. You keep making them explain their statements. They will lose. If you're ever at a family gathering and your sister-in-law or your liberal woman cousin is sitting there talking to you about, or trying to argue with you about, bring up the bear thing and the points that I try to bring up. Because they do not know how to argue that. Everything I told you today is a hack to argue with these people. Because that's what we have to do. Especially the young Gen Z men. Like, you have to be able to argue your point in college, in the world, because you're going to be working with these people. And they're going to be the loudest, the most ignorant, and you have to be able to challenge them on that. And you have to remain level-headed men. Men specifically. I want you to see here. I get it. It's okay to show emotion. You have to keep your fucking head level. When women go hysterical, no one cares. When men go hysterical, you are automatically a villain. You don't have that luxury. You have to stay level-headed. You're going to get more out of it, and you're going to become far more effective mentally, physically even, when you can keep it under composure. So when you get in these arguments with these women and they say vile shit, as they always do, like I said, stay offensive. Pick apart their arguments, because there are not arguments. They always just do statements that are always just accusing you of something that they have no idea who you are. Get after them. Stay offensive on it. Make them explain themselves. Make them explain their statements. Because eventually down the road, they can't explain it. And they have that harsh reality in their head of, fuck, I can't explain this. That's all you need. All you need to do is make these people, these liberal women, go home and look in the mirror and realize, fuck, I'm on the wrong side of history. That's the key. And all of you out there who are not the liberal leftist woman, you are on the right side of history for the most part. but they don't know that, and that's their biggest base. They're the fuel that is the hyper leftism that is going on right now, the rampant leftism that's going on. They are the fuel for it. So you have to cut it off. And how do you do that? You make them explain themselves. And you hold them accountable for what they believe in. They will lose. Trust me. So, anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. I had to get that one off. One of the more exciting ones, because it's something that no matter what you do when you're arguing or debating people, whether it's online or in a classroom or whatever, it's so imperative. It's so imperative that you use that and do exactly what I said there, and use exactly what I said to your advantage, because you're gonna crush people. You do exactly what I say, and that's going to change perception of rooms. And when you change perception of rooms, you change perceptions of reality. And then all of a sudden, people start to come around and be like, oh, shit. But that's why it's important to keep composure. So anyway, hope you guys have a great week, great night. I will be on Wednesday and Friday again. Do not, if you're snowbound, again, as you guys can see in the background, I am an Ole Miss grad. Huge fan. So all of you in Oxford, Mississippi, praying for you. Hope you guys are okay. I know I live up in Kansas, so I'm used to the ice, and I know how fucking annoying it is and really stupid it is and how dangerous it is. So don't take it lightly. It's not a joke. We're feeling for you, and I hope you guys get better, and that goes for the whole South, as you guys are kind of covered in just ice. So God bless. Take what I said to heart tonight. Seriously. I hope if there is one that I want to get the most views, the most viral, it's this one, truly. Okay, so anyway, good night. Have a good one. God bless, guys.